Hey buddy, welcome to the 1980s. Why not have a seat on my waterbed? Would you like some cocaine? If you're hungry or thirsty, we've got tons of Slice and C-3POs. That's right, dude, it's time to talk about GTA Vice City. If you're new here, I'm doing videos about all 5 main GTAs, starting with the original trilogy, which I've never played. After careful consideration, I decided that the only way to fairly judge these games was to buy a PS2 and play them in their original, unabridged, unaltered form. I did a video on GTA 3, which you should definitely check out, then come right back here. So now that you've watched that, you'll recall that while I enjoyed GTA 3, I found it to be more of an interesting education than it was an actual fun game for me to play. And for a minute there, I was kind of thinking like, damn, these games are acclaimed and beloved and all that, but there just might not be any way for me to get what people got out of these games back in the day. That's how I felt after playing GTA 3, but after playing Vice City, this, ooh baby, this is a good game right here. Rockstar at this point could have just rested on their laurels, released the sequel to GTA 3, call it GTA 4, make it pretty much the same shit as the last one, with just a new map, same cars, same guns, same creepy mute protagonist, same janky-ass mission design, set it in Carcer City, it's like Chicago or Detroit or something. It's like the same type of map as Liberty City, and boom, you got yourself a GTA 3 sequel. Would have been easy, would have made a lot of money, but nah. The GTA franchise cannot just sit there and be pretty good. Every mainline entry has to be a revolutionary, mind-blowing game changer. And after the game that changed the game, this game came and changed the game again. I mean, this is a staggering improvement over the last game. Staggering. Especially since it only took them a single year to develop this. It's clear they understood a lot of the annoying shortcomings that made GTA 3 feel so frustrating and in some ways underwhelming from a modern perspective. Like the protagonist. The guy from GTA 3 didn't have a name and never spoke. In the time since, he's come to be known as Claude, but the way he never said anything and rarely had a reaction to any of this shit kinda made my skin crawl. Like, this dude is straight up scary. I know every GTA protagonist is an evil sociopathic murderer, whether the game wants to acknowledge it or not, but Claude was way less Tony Montana and a lot more Michael Myers. Vice City's Tommy Vercetti is a self-admitted psychopath, but at least he's fun and charismatic, and he has a voice. A famous voice. Goddamn Ray Liotta. The last game had a small handful of known actors, but Vice City is bringing the heat this time with a massive cast. I'm talking William Fichtner, Danny Trejo, Fairuza Balk, Luis Guzman, Dan Schneider, Wait, Dan Schneider, that's, not that Dan Schneider though, right? It's, okay, no, okay, no, it looks like it is that Dan Schneider. Tom Sizemore, Lee Majors, Debbie Harry, Philip Michael Thomas, and to round them out, Gary Busey, Dennis Hopper, and Burt Reynolds. Jesus, was the budget like 500 times bigger on this one? The cast, they range from phoning it in to absolutely crushing it. Top performers for me were William Fichtner as Ken Rosenberg, Philip Michael Thomas as Lance Vance, and surprisingly Burt Reynolds as Avery Carrington. Surprising because a lot of the time when you get someone that big for your video game, they can often think of the role as beneath them, especially if they're an old school guy like Reynolds, and they don't even try, and then you end up with Peter Dinklage in Destiny.
That wizard came from the moon.
Apparently Burt Reynolds did not get along with the game directors, but hey, he still managed to deliver a professional performance. Unfortunately, I thought Luis Guzman kinda sucked. He's a good actor, but he sucked in this game. And Ray Liotta was fine, but he was only giving it like 30% Liotta. I guess some of the bad experiences with some of the celebrities on this game caused Rockstar to start moving away from casting huge actors in their games. They also say hiring lesser known actors makes the story feel more immersive, which I tend to agree with, plus can't imagine they mind that smaller actors are a little more budget friendly. So where to even start with this game? I always heard the soundtrack was top tier, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it can surpass the Mafia 3 soundtrack. I mean, GTA has always had great soundtracks. The last one was really neat since it was made up mostly of original songs by small artists who wrote the music for the game. That was pretty cool, but in the grand scheme of things, not that amazing of a soundtrack, so I was skeptical of this supposedly legendary soundtrack, but once you pop this bad boy in and the neon lights of Vice City fill up your eyeballs, the soundtrack starts going. Then it starts going. But then it keeps going like. Take your back. Last night. Take. I wanna rock. When I say to love. I could fall the breeze. Oh my god, it's good. Emotional, fun, exciting, profound, silly, and 80s as fuck. It was so worth it to buy the original PS2 disc so I could experience the full soundtrack, but it turns out I actually didn't buy the original PS2 disc. You see, I've never actually played this game before, but I do remember when the stupid Definitive Edition came out, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the video, and people were talking about the missing music, and specifically an iconic moment near the beginning of the game where you get into a car and drive around while Billie Jean plays. I wasn't sure exactly where this was in the game except for near the beginning, so I kept playing, but I grew increasingly concerned after like 10 hours when I hadn't heard either of the Michael Jackson songs that were listed in the manual. So I looked up the part where the song is supposed to play while you drive, and it turned out that part was at the very beginning, but I did not remember it at all. Well, I guess I'll just have to save and start a new game real quick to confirm whether or not the song plays, I thought to myself, and I did, and the song did not play. But how? I know those songs have been removed in subsequent releases since Michael Jackson's music is extremely expensive to license, but this is a PS2 disc. There'd be no way for them to go in and alter this version of the game, right? I mean, right? So I did a little digging and found out there actually was a second version of Vice City released for the PS2 that I guess fixed a lot of bugs, censored a few things, and removed the song Running with the Night by Lionel Richie. Okay, I see here in my game manual that song's not listed in the soundtrack, so I must have that version of the game. But wait, those two Michael Jackson songs are still listed in the manual, but they certainly aren't in the game, and everywhere I looked online, people seem to be well aware of the no Lionel Richie version, but I could not find any mention of the no Michael Jackson version outside of the Definitive Edition. But upon closer inspection of the game box and the disc itself, I realized that this version of Vice City that I bought was originally part of a box set of the trilogy released for the PS2 in 2006. So, I was a little peeved at the vintage game store I bought this at because on the back of the box it says not for individual sale, so... And it's kind of weird that Rockstar were willing to print new manuals when Lionel Richie got removed, but when other songs started getting removed, I guess they didn't want to pay more to print extra manuals again, so instead they left in the old manual that lies to you. So yeah, apparently Rockstar's history of subpar re-releases goes back way further than I thought. And this is also a bit of a cautionary tale for my vintage media collectors in the audience. Not everything is as vintage as it appears at first glance. You always gotta do a little research, make sure you're actually getting the exact piece of media you're looking for. You do not want to find yourself paying $3 million for an Action Comics #1, only to find out a few days later that it's a reprint from 2017 that doesn't even include Lionel Richie. So yes, I ended up once again leaving my house, going back to the game store. I didn't try to return the other copy of Vice City because I thought it'd be cool to have, and it was only like $10 anyway. But I did study the new game disc very, very carefully this time to make absolutely sure it was the right one. When I put it in, my PS2 was very confused. I was trying to load data from a newer version of Vice City that I guess wasn't compatible with the original version. I ended up having to delete the other file and start the game over, and even though I was quite a ways in, I wasn't even mad because it's really just so fun and I was totally cool to enjoy the first half again. The vibe and atmosphere of this game is so laid back and inviting, especially compared to GTA 3. In that game, everything felt sad, mysterious, dark. The intro was like... But Vice City's intro is like... And the opening cutscene was like...
Liberty City is in shock today as the police and emergency services deal with the aftermath.
But Vice City's opening cutscene is like...
Hey guys, it's Ken Rosenberg here. Hey!
GTA 3 cruising around was like... But in Vice City, cruising around is like... Liberty City was a grimy, crime-ridden pit, the worst city in America according to the box. It was scary and mean, but Vice City is so immediately inviting, the sunshine, the beaches, the neon lights, the interesting, fun architecture. See, Liberty City was extremely loosely based on New York City. It kind of felt like New York, but it has just as much in common with any other East Coast or Midwest American city. It wasn't until GTA 4 that Liberty City really started to resemble New York specifically. However, here, Vice City is very plainly Miami and nothing else. And it's a fucking impressive map. It isn't any bigger than the last map, but it feels vast. Vast city. There are only 2 main islands compared to Liberty City's 3, but you see southern Florida in real life is actually a crumbling, dissolving landmass that is quickly being consumed by the mighty Atlantic Ocean. So there are all these little islands and specks of land dotted about in the ocean that make the map feel a lot more dense and detailed. Both main islands are only about 2 to 3 blocks wide in most spots, but you can already see Rockstar's penchant for hiding how small a map really is with a combination of clever road layouts, building placement, and of course the limited render distance of the PS2. GTA 3 had a handful of somewhat neat locations, but that's all they ever were, was neat. Vice City has awesome locations. Ocean Drive, which is just incredible. The Vercetti Mansion, which is very, very Scarface. The golf course you can't actually play golf on, but it's still cool. The movie studio, which has several sound stages full of cool shit, and a backlot that resembles Liberty City, where you can find Ray's Bulletproof Patriot from 3. There are great interiors, too. The last game had 0 interiors, even during cutscenes. The closest you'd ever get were these sort of indoor-outdoor spaces that were not fully indoor spaces. Safe houses were inside, but you could never actually go inside them. Here, your first safe house, the Ocean View Hotel, has this cool lobby, this extremely dark hallway, and this super neat hotel room with a bunch of cute details. The mansion has a lot of rooms and cool locations. The mall has a bunch of stores you can use, a little smoothie stand, food court, and a working escalator. Come on, how cool is that? Look at that, come on. They did this on the PS2. They made that work on the PS2. Come on, that's cool. The Malibu Club, again, very Scarface. I mean, the beach itself is awesome. There is this cool lighthouse where you can go up to the top, but you can't actually touch the light. I was trying a couple different ways. I tried getting up there, but I just couldn't find a way. But what are they hiding up there? Why won't you let me touch it? I know there's an enchantment in the light. The only issue is that most of this cool stuff is on the first island, so unlocking the second island doesn't really feel like as much of a reward as it did in the last game, but the map as a whole is such a joy. Just walking around the street feels so cool and pleasant, which is something I expect from a Rockstar game nowadays, but in the last game, walking down the street sucked because, 1, the world was gross and sad, but more importantly, you were constantly getting shot at by gang members everywhere in the city, so you could never just go for a nice stroll. Vice City wisely understands that most of the city shouldn't be so frustrating and dangerous. There's still some gang territory in the game, but it's far less and only in areas that make sense. So you can enjoy the beach or the poolside without having to worry about any shit going down. This really makes a difference in terms of creating a world that players will simply enjoy existing in. The biggest disappointment is that you still can't swim. In 3, I didn't feel any desire to swim. The water looked toxic, the beach was sad, it seemed cold all the time, but here the water looks so darned appealing, I just wish I could dive in and cool off. And there's more water around the map in general for you to fall into and die, which is a bit annoying, and far more water-based activities, so come on, just let me swim. Come on. Found navigating to be much easier, probably because the map was a bit more straightforward and kind of linear, but also because I spent far more time cruising around just for fun, so I got to know the city way better. But most importantly, the mad boys over at Rock Band Games finally went ahead and put an actual map in the game. I'm not just talking about the paper map that comes with the box. I'm talking the pause menu has an interactive map in the game. If you played the older games, you understand how fucking lost you constantly got trying to navigate your way across the various islands to a completely unknown destination. You can't set waypoints here, but at least you finally know where the hell you're headed. You seriously cannot understand how amazing this feels if you didn't play the older games, but it's a damn revelation. Because of the period setting, they couldn't really reuse most of the cars they made for the last game, except of course the ones that kind of looked older, but that was only a handful. Like GTA 5 reuses pretty much every car model created for 4, since it's set just a few years later, but they couldn't do that here. They had to basically remake 80s versions of all the previous cars. They even have an 80s version of the Mafia Sentinel, which was like my favorite car from 3. I don't know why, I mean, it's pretty much just a boxy black sedan, but damn, it's so cool, and somehow feels so distinctly early 2000s Mafia. It's really impressive that even with PS2 graphics, they were able to make these really feel like the exact same model of car, just a few decades apart. There are new types of boats, plus the addition of motorcycles, helicopters, and airplanes. I don't know exactly what it is, but helicopters look so badass when they're touching down in this game. Look at this. It's also kind of shocking how much they seem to have pretty much entirely fixed most of the dumb shit from the last game. You're not forced to use inverted aiming controls anymore. Can you believe that? A revelation! And okay, so when you die during a mission, it still takes all your guns and makes you restart from the hospital like in the last one, but now they have this cab waiting for you outside the hospital that'll take you right back to the beginning of the mission so you can restart it faster. But, even better, there are a ton of buyable safe houses all around the map, so you can pretty much save near the start of any mission, which saves you time if you die, and you get to keep all your guns. Plus, saving your game replenishes your health. Another welcome convenience. I know the last game had safe houses, but it was only one per island, and they were usually pretty tedious to drive to, so having them all over is a very welcome addition. But these workarounds make me wonder, why have the workarounds? I mean, if you know this is an issue, why not just let me restart the mission right away from the mission failed screen? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of technical reason I don't understand, but it's still shady to me. AI isn't much smarter than it was in the last game. Here's me waiting for my boy to get into the car. One, I think, underappreciated technical leap is the character models. In the last one, their torsos were always separated into chunks. I've taken the liberty of stealing some HD footage so you guys can see what I'm talking about, but it's still pretty obvious even on the PS2. Thankfully, they figured that out for Vice City. Everyone's torso is in one piece, and I honestly think that makes it easier to connect to the characters since they look more human. I'd also like to mention in this game and the last game, there are loading screens when you travel between islands, which could very easily take you right out of the game and break that precious immersion you're always going on about, but they cleverly found a way to get the radio to keep playing without any interruptions, which makes the transition feel a lot more seamless. I just think that's worth mentioning. Plus, the loading screens are mercifully short, especially with modern games like Starfield having way more egregious loading screens. They clearly worked very hard to find the best way to make sure a little loading doesn't take you out of the fun. Unfortunately, the issue of stealable cars not being able to always spawn still persists, especially when you're in a car chase, which is when you need them the most. Simply not enough RAM on this thing, I guess. Shooting controls are still the same as the last game, with a couple of tiny adjustments, turning off inverted aiming. It's a revelation. The targeting reticle is a little easier to see, which is nice, and they kind of have a little bit of a cover system now, where you can crouch in place and then pop up when you aim your gun. Plus, I'm just far more used to this control scheme after playing through 3, and this combined with the shooting missions being far more forgiving with the enemy placement and the health pickups, made pretty much every mission damn fun with minimal frustration. In GTA 3, 9 out of 10 times when I finished a mission, I was just like, thank fuck that's over, but in Vice City, the missions were generally fun as hell. Not only less punishing, but far more story-driven, and with much more interesting set pieces and mission parameters. I heard a lot about this RC helicopter mission being really hard, but I didn't think it was hard at all. I mean, what? I don't know, you have plenty of time, plenty of health. Even the airplane one wasn't that bad. I mean, that one took me a few tries, but that wasn't that bad. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I also heard this one where you have to jump a fuck ton of rooftops on this motorcycle rooftop obstacle course, and yeah, this one was actually super hard, because if you fall off the roof, you basically have to start over from the beginning, and you probably run out of time and fail. But after a few attempts, I finally discovered the secret trick of using a helicopter instead of a motorcycle, so you can just fly from checkpoint to checkpoint. This works. Do it. Mission parameters are far more creative. There's this one where you have to drive around Love Fist the band, and they find an explosive in the backseat, and you have to keep the car at a certain speed while they try to disarm it. Functionally, it's exactly the same as having a countdown clock, but instead, you hear the band members panicking and fumbling around with the bomb in the back, which is way more fun. Golf cart chase, more fun than standard car chase. Cool bank robbery where they give you this hockey mask and this jumpsuit, and you look like Freddy Krueger from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Ooh, Freddy Krueger Chainsaw. Story is definitely a step up. Playing this smooth, cool guy on a quest to run the damn city of Vice City is much more of a fun and gamey motivation for the player than the simple revenge story of the last game. Not to say that there isn't any revenge here. From the very beginning, there's revenge. Tommy's fresh out of a 15-year prison sentence because of this whole ordeal that his boss or whatever, Sonny, sent him on. Then he gets into another ordeal when he's doing a drug deal with these guys, the Vance brothers, but it turns out it's an ambush and one of the Vance boys is killed and Tommy loses Sonny's money and it's all fucked up. So Tommy and this lawyer Ken Rosenberg gotta try to scheme to get Sonny's money back and get revenge on this guy Ricardo Diaz who set up the ambush, but they can't do it right away. Then Tommy runs into Lance Vance, whose brother got killed at the beginning, who wants to help with the revenge. Then they gotta get close to Diaz first, pretend they're on his side, but then at some point Lance just jumps the gun and tries to kill Diaz himself, so Tommy has to rescue him and then go back and kill Diaz right then and there. And then they do it and then they just move on into his mansion and Tommy is like, you know what, fuck Sonny Forelli, I'm gonna set up shop in Vice City and fucking run this town with Lance Vance and Ken Rosenberg. And they all take that shit over, but for some reason Lance Vance out of nowhere just turns into a whiny little bitch, saying Tommy isn't giving him enough credit for his skills, and like, bro, you fucked up the whole plan and almost ruined everything and almost died. Now you're sitting here drinking in the middle of the day with these fucking chumps while shit's falling apart around you and you want more responsibility?
Vance! Your name's Lance Vance!
What the hell kind of name is
Lance Vance!
He goes from enigmatic, mysterious badass to entitled asshole out of absolutely nowhere. Can someone in the comments please explain to me what the hell happened with this character? But anyway, once Vice City is well and taken over, Sonny comes a-callin'. But Tommy's ready, but he's not ready because, wow, are you fucking serious? Fucking Lance betrays him? Then he says, sorry, it's just business? That doesn't make it any better. I'd honestly be less pissed off if it was personal. After everything we've been through, you're gonna sell me out for business? I guess people feel sad about having to kill Lance at the end, but honestly, he's a fucking snake and he got what he deserved. What an asshole. Tommy then kills Sonny too, and then turns out Ken, the shifty lawyer, was actually the one who managed to stay loyal. So boom, Vice City is yours, baby. That's what I call a GTA. Pretty much every character is fun and memorable. In the last game, I was like, I like Asuka, Ray's pretty funny, Donald Love almost interesting, but then he just disappears from the story without a warning. A younger version of Donald Love actually does appear in this game.
Tommy, this is Donald Love.
I mean, he's like Avery Carrington's protege or something.
Now, nothing brings down real estate prices quicker than a good old-fashioned gang war.
Nothing drives down real estate prices like a good old-fashioned gang war.
Except maybe a disaster like a biblical plague or something, but that may be going too far in this case.
Apart from an outbreak of plague. But that might be going too far in this case.
But he doesn't speak, and I'm now wondering if the reason he disappears in the last game is because they got Kyle MacLachlan for like an 8-hour day in the recording booth. Then when they got to the end of the 8 hours, he had like 2 more hours worth of lines to read, but they couldn't afford it, so they just sent him on his way and had the character disappear. Avery Carrington also kind of disappears from the story, but it feels a little less abrupt here. I love Lance until he turns into a bitch. I love Ken Rosenberg. He feels the most like a real person to me for some reason. There's this director who I guess makes really high-budget pornos. He's kind of got a Francis Ford Coppola, Stanley Kubrick look, but his name is Steven Scott, likely a mashup of famous directors Steven Spielberg and Michael Scott. The English, Scottish, whatever rock band Love Fist are hilarious. These two guys in the boat that call Tommy Suit Dude even when he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and jeans. Laszlo returns as the radio DJ. We also get the return of Fernando, who in the last game was like this grifter trying to sell people on his sleazy seminar or whatever on these radio commercials, but here he's a host of the station Emotion 98.3, which features a lot of genuinely affecting music, which usually caps off with a joke that surprisingly doesn't undercut the song, which is nice. And my favorite returning radio host was Tony. In the last game set in the modern day, she hosted the Flashback radio station called Flashback FM that played a lot of hits from the 80s, and she was constantly talking about her heyday. So here now we are in the 80s, and she's the host of Flash FM, which plays the hottest pop hits of the day, and she's constantly talking about being youthful and partying and never growing old. It's really cool and funny, and it's an awesome connection if you play GTA 3. It's a fun story, and the setting's just perfect for a lighthearted action crime game. A bunch of well-dressed rich douchebags killing each other over cocaine in mansions is like the least tragic type of violent crime there is in this world. And it's the 80s, and everyone who was alive in the 80s is dead by now anyway, so it's fine either way. The biggest fail of the story is how the first half is somewhat linear, but then the second half just has you running around the city doing random self-contained groups of missions that don't really connect in the same way the earlier ones did. You pretty much have to buy most of the businesses around the map and then do all the jobs for that business, and then when you do them all, you get the final mission. The biggest problem is that there's a chance it could get a little grindy if you aren't smart enough with your money early on, and it definitely drags down the pacing of the latter half of the story. It is cool that you actually have stuff to spend the money on with the businesses and the weapons and the clothes. I love playing this game so much that I actually decided I was going to 100% it, which was a very interesting journey. I actually had already gotten all 100 hidden packages early on, so I could check that off the list, so I decided to start with completing all the races. I had to do most of them a few times, but I didn't mind since, again, driving around in this game is always just so enjoyable. But the final race was a circuit of the entire map, and it was so long, and it was so hard to complete without crashing and blowing up at least one car, which usually costs you the entire race. So I decided to employ my GTA 3 strategy of parking cars in front of the starting line, but I think they got wise to that strategy because there were never enough cars around when I tried to do this. So then I thought of a new strategy to win the race, which was I went to get the tank, drove the tank to the starting line, blow everyone else up immediately when the race starts, then go for a leisurely drive through Vice City, and then get first place. Boom! All 6 races completed. Next was the shooting range challenge. This challenge presented a real challenge for me. Precision aiming with the PS2 controller is next to impossible with these thumbsticks. It's pretty much either 0 input or maximum input. It's almost impossible to do anything in between on this controller. So fine movement can't really be done, but I really wanted to get that 100%, and I needed to complete the shooting range to do it, which meant getting a score of 45 or higher. Didn't seem that hard after getting like a 34 on my first attempt, but after about an hour, you start to realize that you need nearly 100% accuracy in a very short amount of time to hit that score. The first dummy here is worth 1 point, middle one is worth 2 points, back one is worth 3, so with your very limited time and very limited ammo, the front dummy is just a waste of bullets. You want to only go for the 2 in the back, but then this also means the front fella here becomes an obstacle that needs to be avoided at all costs, and you have to destroy the entire dummy to get the points, which means shooting all 5 pieces to get 3 points at most. And I want to reiterate that fine movements are not possible with this controller, so I kept trying and trying and trying, wrong. A few times I got close, but not close enough. I would get like 42 or 43 and just think, okay, just need to slow down, take my time, focus in. But then the clock would run out and I'd be like, okay, what I need to do here is be faster and hit those targets quick. But then I'd run out of ammo. And after about 2.5 hours, I said, okay, I'm gonna give myself a 3-hour maximum here. If I can't get it done within 3 hours, then I need to just give up. I mean, it could take another 10 hours at that point. Who knows? Even more maybe. I don't know. It could take forever. So when I hit the 3-hour mark, I hadn't gotten there yet, but I decided, all right, this is gonna be my last try. If I don't win here, it's time to give up entirely. And buddy, I was nailing those fucking dummies. I swear I was making it look easy. If you're watching this on the screen right now, you're like, man, that's easy. You're popping and popping and popping those motherfuckers. But it's not easy. It's hard. This was the result of intense skill, intense practice, intense honing. But I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there I was, locking eyes with my own destiny. I was at 42 points. I easily popped off 4 pieces of that back dummy. Only 1 piece left. 1 piece left and I get 3 points. That would put me at 45. A fucking winner. 1 piece left. 1 bullet left. 1 second left on the timer. One last chance. I didn't have time to aim. I didn't have time to think. I moved the stick ever so slightly and pushed down with one fateful button press. And I missed. So, I got up, packed my things, brushed my teeth, finished pouring the gasoline, took one last look at my old life, then tossed my lit cigarette, setting my home ablaze and calmly walking off into the desert, never to be heard from again. Are you guys familiar with Miami Vice? You should be if you're a fan of Vice City. The game takes heavy inspiration from both Miami Vice and Scarface. In fact, I'm like 99% sure Vice City is only called Vice City because of Miami Vice. If you don't know, it's this TV show from the 80s about these 2 cops in Miami who are always going undercover to bust drug deals or drug shipments or whatever a Vice cop does. And because I love GTA Vice City so much, I just wanted to keep that vibe going, and I actually watched a whole bunch of Miami Vice. I gotta say, I gotta say, it's not bad. Thought it was gonna be some boring ass shit like Starsky and Hutch or LA Law or whatever cop show from back then, but it's certainly a cut above. The show follows Crockett and Tubbs, played by Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas. Don Johnson you might know from Django Unchained. Philip Michael Thomas you might know from GTA Vice City, where he plays Lance Vance. That's pretty cool. These two actually have really good chemistry on the show, and they seem like a pair of genuine boys. It's funny, Rico Tubbs and Lance Vance have pretty much identical backstories, where their brother is killed in a drug deal gone wrong at the beginning, so they have a personal score to settle. The only difference being that the Tubbs brothers were undercover cops and the Lance brothers were, of course, actual drug dealers, but it's certainly an interesting choice to make them so similar. The show's also created by Michael Mann, who's done a lot of great movies, and nowadays does the show Tokyo Vice, so that's cool. The funny thing about Miami Vice is the insanely long list of extremely famous people who showed up on the show as guest stars, usually before they were famous. Here's one with Bruce Willis, like 3 years before Die Hard. This one has a young Bill Paxton and Wesley Snipes. Some of them actually are special guest appearances from people who actually were famous at the time, like this one with Willie Nelson. This one's pretty cool. They were clearly super psyched to have him there and built the character and the episode around him. Plus his acting is hilarious in it.
You want something?
Yeah, brighten up your miserable life.
But this episode also has a few appearances from a very young Steve Buscemi. There's this other one where George Takei is the special guest star, and he plays like this crime boss, and I was like, hell yeah, this is gonna be awesome. George Takei is like the crime boss villain in this episode. That's gonna be badass. Then he was only in 2 scenes in the entire episode. This was at the height of George Takei's fame. Why did you bother casting him when he could have gotten some rando for much cheaper? It's George Takei. He was about to be promoted to captain of the Excelsior.
I don't give a damn if it's a USS Enterprise, pal. Or who's on it, or why.
Fine, Sonny, I know you don't care, but it means a lot to people like me. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if he had 0 notoriety at this point, but he was already goddamn George Takei. Like this other episode has a very brief appearance from Ben Stiller. He's only in 1 scene. I wish it was more, but he was a nobody at that time, so I understand. In that episode, the special guest stars Brian Dennehy, who was also pretty famous at that point, so the whole episode focused on him, like they did with Willie Nelson, and like they should have done with George Takei. That fun fact though, Brian Dennehy's daughter, Elizabeth Dennehy, actually played Commander Shelby in Star Trek The Next Generation, so. The episode with Phil Collins is pretty good, his acting is surprisingly solid. The show is quite stylistically bold for 80s TV, they really make a lot with what they have. I honestly thought Crockett and Tubbs were pretty cool dudes too, but I mean maybe that just means I'm getting old, but the music is phenomenal, all the licensed songs fit so well and make these possibly somewhat dull scenes feel so exciting, and the score is absolutely tubular. Crockett's theme from the show, they just straight up use that song on the Vice City soundtrack because it's so badass. The other cops are awesome. Gina and Trudy, Beardo, who shaves off his beard in like season 2, and best of all, Edward James Olmos as Lieutenant Castillo, the most badass motherfucker in Miami. All he ever does is stand behind his desk and write stuff down with a pencil, but you know this man is not to be fucked with. I didn't watch all 100-something episodes of the show, but I watched a good 20 to 25, and I feel like I got a real solid understanding of this cool show, and it helped me appreciate Vice City a lot better. They also made a Miami Vice movie in 2006, and you know what? It fucking sucks. In the early 2000s, they were doing a lot of big-budget movies that were based on cheesy old TV shows. You're probably familiar with the Lost in Space movie or the Star Trek movie. And they would also take boring old cop shows and turn them into fun action comedies, like the Starsky and Hutch movie or the 21 Jump Street movie. But this movie takes a fun old cop show and tries to turn it into a dark action thriller. The show was certainly more serious and more adult than most of the stuff that was on TV at the time, but there was always plenty of levity and there were fun, cheesy lines. Crockett and Tubbs were bros. Ben Stiller. Look at this episode where Crockett has to go undercover as a nerd to lure a prostitute. And they're like, well, what would a nerd do if he was on vacation in Miami? I know, he'd sit by the pool and start crunching some numbers. That's fucking hilarious. I don't think there's a single joke or lighthearted moment in this entire movie. Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx are named Crockett and Tubbs, but they're extremely miscast, Colin Farrell especially. The only resemblance they have to the characters on the show is that they're the same race as those characters, and that they gave Colin Farrell longish, blondish hair, but it pales in comparison to this. We know one thing about Crockett in this movie. He's a cop. We know two things about Tubbs. He's a cop, and he loves his girlfriend. I don't know if I've ever felt more disconnected from a protagonist in a movie. I feel a stronger connection to Jake Sully than I do to these vacuous mannequins. They're like a pair of robots, or like two agents from a sci-fi movie that may or may not be aliens. These guys have like 3 conversations in the entire movie, and every single one is strictly business. And when they do this at the end, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are supposed to be friends. These guys are supposed to be Crockett and Tubbs. You get to know Crockett and Tubbs better in the first 30 minutes of the first episode of the show than you do in this entire 2-hour movie. My expectations were not high for this film, but I was still monumentally disappointed. Like, yeah, I'd heard it sucks, but I'm usually pretty easy on remakes. Like, yeah, there's pretty much no chance it'll ever be as good as the original, but I usually just find it fun and novel to see some low-budget movie I love from the 70s or 80s redone with a bunch of Hollywood money and slick new production techniques. And despite the limitations of a TV budget and schedule and aspect ratio, the show could often be very ambitious with its cinematography. They tried to work in cool shots and interesting lighting as much as they could, so my expectations for the film were basically, okay, the cast is wrong, the story might suck, but all I want are a bunch of sweet shots of Miami, a bit of highly stylized lighting, and a couple of moments of Crockett and Tubbs cruising around with a dope song playing. But no, some of the lighting is really cool at times, but I found the cinematography to be wildly inconsistent. There are a lot of great shots, but plenty of not great shots. They use a lot of these handheld close-ups that look strangely terrible. There are so few shots of Miami, in fact most of the movie doesn't take place in Miami, which is crazy for a movie called Miami Vice. I know they left Miami sometimes on the show, but they certainly didn't do it in their first adventure. The only really awesome shot we get of Miami is the scene with the speedboats that opens the movie. I mean, look at that, huh? Anyone? This opening scene sets the bar way too high because there are 0 other cool shots of Miami in the entire film. There are some shots where you can see Miami, but they're not shots of Miami. And you want to know something else? This scene is only in the director's cut. They left it out of the theatrical version. It's the best scene in the movie, and it's not even in the movie. The score fucking sucks. Where the hell's Crockett's theme? There are a couple of decent moments, but it's mostly just generic action score, a far cry from the great music from back in the day. The licensed soundtrack fucking sucks. The music on the show went so goddamn hard, and this movie just keeps hitting you with only song choice that almost worked was the use of this song Encore/Numb in the opening scene, which I guess is some kind of mashup of Jay-Z, Kanye West, and Linkin Park. Much like Phil Collins or whatever from the show, this song is retro and cheesy, but undeniably fun. I think it's the perfect song to play under all those shots of the boys cruising around that I wanted. And I was gonna edit something together, some shots of them cruising around and play the song to illustrate my point, but there actually are 0 shots of them cruising around in the movie. There are some quick shots of them in the car, but they're on their phone in all those shots. They're not cruising. So instead, I'm just going to use footage from the show to illustrate my point. All right, here we go.
Yeah. Thank you. Far too kind. Yeah. Ready? Let's go. Can I get a...
See what I mean? This movie feels like it was made by somebody...
I've become so numb, I can't feel you there. Become so tired, so much more.
This movie movie feels like it was made by somebody who only vaguely remembers seeing an episode or two of Miami Vice in the 80s, except it was written and directed by Michael Mann, who created the original show and has made tons of great movies. This guy made Heat. This guy made Collateral. This guy made Manhunter. This guy made Miami Vice, the TV show. How could he have fucked this up so bad? If this was just a failed Miami Vice adaptation, but a good movie on its own, I would have assumed maybe Michael Mann had a script he really wanted to turn into a movie, but nobody would give him money to make it, so then he just decided to call it Miami Vice to make it more marketable, but this movie sucks on its own too. I thought the final action scene was going to be in some cool Miami location, like a sweet beachfront mansion or a swanky hotel or a yacht or something, but nah, it's just in this empty scrapyard on a dock full of gravel. In this scene, Colin Farrell's like, hey, yo, I got the drugs, you got the money? And the bad guy's like, yeah, I got the money, but I'm not giving you your girlfriend back until I verify the drugs. And Colin Farrell says, all right, how about you send my girlfriend, your only hostage, over to check out the drugs? And the bad guy says, all right, but no escaping when I send her over, and then they immediately start escaping. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that these two actors hated each other on set. These two guys were clearly good friends with each other. These two guys were both in the movie Horrible Bosses. Colin Farrell's Irishness usually doesn't take me out of a movie usually, but Crockett is such a down-home American boy on the show, and I don't know if a European is fully capable of occupying that headspace. Just look at them talking.
Or you can start playing games and you'll flush them. And then we'll all get exactly what you little boys in Washington generally shoot at. Nothing.
Somebody from my side lays eyes on the money. Only then do we call in the dope. And somebody from your side can go look at the product.
If I was making this movie, I would have gone more for the soft reboot route, same universe as the show. Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx are playing two brand new characters. I wouldn't necessarily need to see a cameo from 55-year-old Crockett and Tubbs, but instead of this boring-ass police captain, hey, how about you bring back Edward James Olmos as Castillo? He was awesome. We don't get any backstory for these two guys in the movie. Are we just supposed to assume it's the same backstory in the show? I don't know, it doesn't really fit. It doesn't fit with the characters. Where's Crockett's boat and his pet gator? Their car isn't cool. It's fine, but it's not that cool. This actor, I fucking hate this actor. He's in so many movies and he always sucks. Hey, Chris Rock's in this episode. Look, there's Luis Guzman. He plays Ricardo Diaz in Vice City. So that's two actors shared between Miami Vice and Vice City. Also, Diaz's shirt is a lot like this shirt Tony Montana wears at the beginning. I like how if you get enough stars, the boys from the Vice Squad show up in a very Crockett and Tubbs-esque car. Look, getting 100% in Vice City would have been awesome. I wanted to be a real cool guy who had actually done it on the original hardware, but I guess I'm too busy getting laid all the time to be good at video games. And if you're typing in the comments, wow, dude, the challenge isn't even that hard, dude. I beat it in like 3 tries, dude. You just need to fucking get good, bro. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it unless you're talking about the original PS2 version. If you beat this challenge on the PC version, or the Xbox version, or the iPhone version, or the Definitive Edition, or the 10-year anniversary edition, or anything other than the first edition PS2 version with the original controller, do not tell me that part was easy. So yeah, that sucked. I mean, I'm sure the PC version would have been a cinch with the mouse and keyboard. Like, that's just moving a cursor around and clicking the right spots. I'm literally doing it right now while editing this video. But this is one of the reasons I actually do like the authentic original version of the game. I want to experience the way too hard BS of these old titles. And I still feel like a true gamer. I'm just gonna tell myself that failing to beat that challenge was actually the true gamer experience that all the OGs got, when they played this on the PS2. See, nowadays I see someone online playing GTA 3 on the PC and they're like, here I am with the original version of GTA 3, and I'm like, son, that's not the original version. That is the PC version. You fucking poser. It's very rare for me to 100% a game. I only do it if there's a really cool reward, like Spider-Man underwear costume, or if I just love the game so much and I just can't get enough, and this was certainly a case of the latter. I mean, the t-shirt would have been cool, but I was really just looking for an excuse to play more Vice City. Since I couldn't get that hundo, I did a few more side activities, but mostly just spent my time driving around, just for fun. To enjoy myself. In GTA 5, I love driving around just for fun, to look at the scenery and listen to the music on the radio, the sunset, whatever, but I didn't care much to go for a simple ride in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but I might love it even more in Vice City. Unfortunately, I also played the Definitive Edition. Now, in my last video, I said that GTA 3 Definitive Edition is not that bad. Most of the bugs, not all, but most of the bugs had been patched out. The unique atmosphere was pretty much gone, but there's really no missing content, and the quality of life improvements make this experience a lot smoother smoother. Overall, not that bad, but Vice City Definitive Edition is that bad. One of the main reasons I wanted to play the original version was because I heard the soundtrack was cut down in this release, but that's not even the problem here. Like, yeah, a few great songs are missing, but pretty much all of them are there. Definitely sucks to lose them, but I'd say getting like 90% of the best thing ever is still pretty good. Soundtrack is honestly the least insulting aspect. I don't even have anything constructive to say, so I'm just gonna list off everything I didn't like. The atmosphere is gone, doesn't have that warm Vice City glow during the day, just flat basic lighting. Nighttime is slightly better with the neon lights, random censorship of random things, TV has no back, less dense foliage. The dense foliage was kind of impressive on the PS2, here they carelessly scaled it back. Escalator barely works, are you fucking kidding me? What the hell, this worked 20 years ago, how is it that bad? Streetlights still fall through the street, waypoint errors.
How you play it?
Remember, is a dirty word. What the hell was that? Some textures don't look improved. Very obvious there's nobody in the limo, but then you cut to the inside of the limo and there's people in the limo. It's not letting me pick up the bomb. Mission marker not working. I don't think you could do this in the original, but that's kind of fun, I guess. Slow running just looks like normal running, but in slow motion. Like when you're running in a dream, it looks weird and feels wrong. Can't listen to the radio in this mission like you could in the original. Constant pop-in. This feels like it was made in dreams. Like if you remember those people, they would make like, I remade Super Mario 64 First World in HD in dreams. This feels like one of those, but with Vice City instead of Mario. Gun floating in hand, nobody in limo again. Great job on the parking lot. Bumping that texture to HD really worked out for you guys. The monitors in Tony Montana's office actually have different displays on them. That's an improvement. That's actually something I like. These fish look terrible. The water also looks terrible. Why doesn't it sparkle like it used to? Floor texture not working. Cop car stuck on pole. Walking upstairs often looks bad. Here's something interesting. We now have the technology to load more cars into the environment, which can actually affect the difficulty. More traffic makes driving around harder, but having more cars to steal and get away in makes getting away from cops easier in some ways. And here's this rampage mission where you have to blow up 10 boats within the time limit. This was really hard in the original, but only because you just had to sit there and kind of just pray, keep your greasy fingers crossed that enough boats would spawn within the time limit for you to blow up. But in the remaster, they spawn non-stop, and you can do this rampage in like a second. Not necessarily a good or bad thing, but it's just interesting, alright? I also checked out the remastered Netflix iOS exclusive digital remastered definitive edition made for iPhone. I don't know why this version of the game gets so much praise online. The only thing that's good about it is that they restored the classic lighting, but all the other issues are still present. Plus, touchscreen controls suck. Once again, my phone is old and can't really run this game. I'd like to play it on my PS5, please. Why still has the classic lighting not been added to the console version? I'm finally starting to understand the reputation this collection has, and from what I understand, the worst is yet to come. This game is still somehow priced at $60 on digital storefronts. That's an insane amount of money to spend on this garbage. You could definitely get yourself a PS2 and all 3 games for under $100, so definitely do that if you're curious about these titles. Vice City is fucking incredible and deserves to be played the way it was intended. So I'd like to thank Don Johnson and Al Pacino for making this game. It was a truly beautiful experience and one that I don't think can ever be matched, even by GTA 6. Alright, this video took too long to make, mostly because I just simply did not want Vice City to be over, but it's time to move on, move forward, and grow up. As you've already just subscribed, I'll see you next time to close out this trilogy on the mean streets of San Andreas, but you won't see me until it's too late.